The message glowed on my phone screen like a wound I couldn't look away from. Thanksgiving is family only. Find somewhere else to eat. My mother's words pulsed against the dim light of my office above Harper's Table, the restaurant I'd built from nothing. I read the text again, my thumb hovering over the screen, as if it could erase the sting. Down below, through the glass wall and security feed, I watched them arrive. My mother, Diane Carter, her beige wool coat buttoned to perfection. My brother Ryan, tall and polished, holding a pumpkin pie. My sister Melissa laughing too loudly at something he said. Behind them came my Aunt Laura, my Uncle Tim cousins I hadn't seen since the pandemic. 15 people in total. My entire family, a full Thanksgiving dinner. Without me. My hands trembled as I reached for the intercom. "Ben," I said, my voice calm in a way that scared even me. "Cancel the Miller reservation." There was a pause. "Are you sure, Elena?" "That's your family," I said. "Cancel it." 20 minutes later, my phone began to vibrate violently across the desk. Missed call after missed call, 48 in total. I didn't move. I just watched the security camera feed as my mother's face twisted into something feral. She slammed her hand on the hostess stand, her voice slicing through the speakers. "Why won't they seat us?" The hostess, trembling, looked helplessly at Ben. He tried to calm her, but my mother was relentless, waving her arms in that familiar, commanding way. My phone rang again. "Mom." I let it go to voicemail. For the first time in my life, I didn't answer her call. I sat back in my chair, staring out the window at the drizzle coating Seattle's streets in silver. Harper's Table glowed warm and inviting beneath me, candles flickering on the empty tables, the hum of soft jazz curling through the air. It was everything I'd dreamed of building. And yet in that moment it felt like a prison cell I'd paid for myself. "Family only," she'd said. I thought about all the times I'd begged to belong, to be enough. The night she'd told me that quitting nursing was a disgrace to our family. The look of disappointment she wore like perfume. Maybe I thought this time she'd finally understand what it felt like to be left out in the cold. Through the camera, I saw my family laughing awkwardly, trying to salvage the night as the staff explained that their reservation had been canceled. My mother turned scarlet, her hand pressed dramatically to her chest. I could almost hear her rehearsed outrage. "How dare they?" She leaned close to the manager, whispering something. He shook his head. She whispered again, angrier this time, her gestures sharp. I knew that look. I'd grown up under it. That "you've humiliated me" stare that had frozen me in place since childhood. The guilt came in waves, uninvited. I pressed my palms to my eyes. What was I doing? She'd pushed me too far, yes, but canceling her reservation was childish. Except she'd made me feel like a child my entire life. Always wrong, always too much, always not enough. Maybe this was the first time I'd pushed back. Maybe it was the only way she'd listen. The phone buzzed again, a text from Ryan. "Ryan, what the hell, Elena? You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone. Melissa, this is why nobody wants you around. You always have to make it about you." The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I typed out a dozen replies and deleted each one. There was no point. They'd already chosen her side. They always did. Another notification pinged Facebook. I clicked it and my stomach sank. Aunt Laura had posted, "Feeling heartbroken tonight. Family should never turn their back on family, especially on Thanksgiving." Beneath it, a photo of my mother outside Harper's Table, wiping fake tears with a napkin. The caption read, "All we wanted was to have dinner together." Some people forget what family means. Dozens of comments followed. So cruel. Unbelievable. Poor Diane. I'd never eat at that place again. The screen blurred as my vision filled with tears I refused to let fall. Ben knocked gently on my office door. "Hey boss, are you okay?" I swallowed hard. "Fine." He hesitated. She's making a scene downstairs. Do you want me to know?" "Let her." He nodded uncertainly and closed the door. I could feel his pity from across the room. Everyone pitied me, the daughter who'd walked away from a respectable career to open a restaurant no one believed in. My mother had made sure of that. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling, trying to slow my breathing. The memories came uninvited, my mother's voice echoing through the years. Nursing is a noble profession, Elena. You help people. You make a difference. Cooking is just feeding them. I'd tried to explain that Harper's table wasn't just about food. It was about creating connection, warmth, belonging, everything our family never had. But she never listened. She never saw me as anything but a mistake she needed to correct. Downstairs, I watched her on the camera again. She was talking to Ben now, her tone sharp and commanding. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out something, a check. My heart dropped. She was trying to buy her way back in. Of course she was. That was her power manipulation wrapped in charm and authority. I zoomed in on her lips, instinctively reading them the way I'd learned to as a kid when my best friend was deaf. If Elena shows up, she was saying, don't let her in. She's banned from this celebration. Banned. The word hit me like a slap. She hadn't just excluded me, she'd forbidden me. My phone vibrated again and again until it was unbearable. I threw it into my bag and walked down the narrow hallway to the stairs that led to the main dining floor. I stopped at the top step, hidden from sight, listening. She's embarrassed me for the last time, my mother hissed. After everything I've done for her. Ryan murmured something and she snapped. No, she's made her choice. She abandoned this family when she walked out of that hospital. The words burned. Abandoned this family. I'd heard that phrase so many times it had lost meaning, yet it still managed to hurt. I turned away, heart hammering. I could confront her now, tell everyone what she'd done, the text, the manipulation, but I knew how that would go. She'd cry, play the victim, twist the story, until I looked like the ungrateful daughter again. No one ever saw the way she pulled the strings. No one saw the control, the quiet cruelty, the guilt she used like a weapon. Back in my office, I sat at my desk and stared at my reflection in the dark window. My face looked older, harder, like someone I didn't recognize. I whispered to the empty room, "You wanted to humiliate me, Mom. Congratulations, you've done it." Then, quieter, "But this time I'm not going to take it." I opened the restaurant's social media page. Already there were 2 one-star reviews posted within the last hour. Owner refuses to serve her own mother on Thanksgiving. Heartless. Disgusting behavior, will never dine here again. Both names familiar. My aunt and cousin. My jaw clenched. I closed the laptop before the tears could spill. The city lights outside blurred into streaks of gold and rain. Somewhere below, my mother was probably giving an interview to someone's phone camera, painting herself as the victim of her cruel daughter. And me, I was alone, watching it all happen like a spectator in my own life. The sound of the front door closing echoed faintly through the building. The night had gone silent. My phone buzzed one last time. Ryan again. Mom's crying. She said, "You've changed. What's wrong with you?" I stared at the message, then deleted it. Maybe I had changed. Maybe I'd finally stopped trying to earn love from someone who only knew how to give control. I looked down at Harper's table, the candles still burning, the table still waiting. My dream was still alive, even if my family wasn't part of it anymore. For the first time in years, I felt something sharp and clear: resolve. She wanted to play power games, fine. But this time I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. Family only, she'd said. I leaned back in my chair, my voice low, steady, certain. Let's see what happens when family isn't the only thing you can control. The fluorescent lights in the hospital buzzed above me as I finished my 14th hour on shift. My hands still smelled like antiseptic, my legs ached, and my head felt hollow. I stripped off my gloves and leaned against the counter, staring at the clock on the far wall. 2 a.m. I'd spent another night watching life slip away under sterile light. My mother, Diane Carter, pushed through the door just then, perfectly composed in her pressed white uniform, her badge gleaming. She was the nurse manager here, my boss, my role model once upon a time. "Another patient complained you were distracted again," she said, her tone sharp but calm like a scalpel. You need to decide, Elena. Are you a nurse, or are you just pretending? I turned, clutching the folded paper in my pocket, a small loan approval that would finally let me open the restaurant I'd been dreaming of. Maybe I'm finally both, I said quietly. Her lips pressed together. You're not serious about this. I am, Mom. I've already signed the lease. Her face hardened the same way it used to when I was a teenager and didn't follow her rules. You're throwing away a stable career for what? Chasing some hobby. You have no idea how hard the world is outside this hospital. I looked around the ward at the silent rooms, the flickering monitors, the faint smell of bleach. Maybe I know too well, I whispered. That was the night everything began to crack between us. For as long as I could remember, my mother and I had been tethered to this place, the hospital, that had shaped our lives. My father, James Harper Carter, had died when I was 16. He'd been the only one who understood that not everyone was meant to spend their life saving others. Sometimes he'd said you save people just by giving them a place to breathe. That sentence had stayed with me long after he was gone. After college, I followed my mother's path into nursing, mostly out of guilt and duty. I was good at it, efficient, compassionate on the surface, but inside, I was empty. Every 12-hour shift left me feeling more like a machine than a person. On my days off, I'd cook. Just simple things at first: soups, pies, roasted vegetables. Somehow food felt like medicine that actually worked. When I told my mother I wanted to open a small restaurant, a place where people could feel at home, she laughed. Cooking for strangers won't pay your bills, she said. You're not a chef, Elena. You're a nurse. You save lives. I want to save my own, I replied. But in Diane's world, wanting anything different was betrayal. Every dinner after that became a cold war. Ryan, my brother, stayed silent, hiding behind his phone. Melissa, my younger sister, nodded along to whatever Mom said. Elena, you're being dramatic, Melissa told me one night. People would kill for a steady job. Then they can have mine, I said, pushing my plate away. Mom's voice cut through the silence. You're selfish. Your father would be ashamed. I looked her straight in the eye. No, Mom. He'd be proud I'm finally doing something for myself. Her jaw tightened. She stood collecting plates with military precision. Then don't expect this family to pick you up when you fall. When she left the room, I could still hear the echo of her heels down the hallway, each step closing the door between us a little more. 2 weeks later, I opened the door to my new beginning. The space was small, a former bakery in a quiet corner of Seattle's Ballard district. The floorboards creaked and the walls were still stained from years of coffee steam, but I saw potential. I painted the walls a soft olive, installed warm lights, and hung a wooden sign over the door, Harper's Table. It was named after my father. I poured every penny I had and every ounce of strength into that place. I worked 18-hour days, sanding furniture, rewriting menus, calling suppliers, training the tiny team I'd hired. Ben, my manager, became my right hand, steady and calm where I was all nerves. On the night before opening, we stood together under the glow of the new sign. You ready? He asked. I exhaled. I've been ready my whole life. The first weekend was chaos, the good kind. The seats were full, the kitchen hummed, and the air smelled like rosemary and butter. By the end of the month, Harper's Table had made it onto a local food blog, a restaurant with heart, the reviewer wrote. When I read those words, I cried in the kitchen. For once, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. I sent my mother a text that night. We're open for Thanksgiving reservations. I'd love for you all to come. She never replied. A week later, Ryan texted instead. Mom's hosting her own Thanksgiving this year. She said you'd be too busy with work. I stared at the message until the words blurred. It wasn't just disappointment, it was confirmation of something I'd known deep down. She wasn't angry because I'd failed. She was angry because I'd succeeded without her. Still, I tried to be hopeful. Every weekend I sent photos, new dishes, customer reviews, local mentions. She never liked, never commented. I told myself she was just busy. Then, one night, Ben came in while I was wiping down tables. You might want to see this, he said, holding up his phone. On Facebook, Diane Carter had posted a photo of Ryan holding up a law certificate, smiling proudly. Her caption read, "So proud of my son for following in his father's footsteps. Some of us still know what family duty means. No mention of me. No hint I even existed." I scrolled through the comments. "What a wonderful mother, you've raised such successful kids. You must be so proud." The words felt like tiny blades cutting into me. I thought of every shift I'd worked to support her after Dad died, every bill I'd paid when she couldn't, every sacrifice she'd told me wasn't enough. And still, I was invisible. I turned off the lights in the dining room and stood alone among the quiet tables. The scent of baked bread lingered in the air, mingled with the bitterness in my chest. "Okay, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "You made your choice." Outside rain pattered against the window. The sign Harper's Table glowed faintly in the dark, and for a moment I imagined my father standing there, his warm smile, telling me to keep going. I closed my eyes and took a breath. "If she wants distance," I said softly, "I'll give her distance. But someday she'll see what she pushed away." The words hung in the air, fragile but true. I locked the door behind me, unaware that the next Thanksgiving would turn that promise into something far more powerful than I could imagine. The first call came just after sunrise. I was standing behind the counter of Harper's Table, balancing the register, when my phone started vibrating nonstop. "What's going on with your mom?" the message read. Then another and another. "Is it true you banned your family from your own restaurant?" My stomach tightened. I opened Facebook and there it was, a video already racking up thousands of views. My mother sitting in our old living room wrapped in a beige cardigan, her hair pinned neatly like she'd just come home from church. Her eyes glistened with tears. "I don't know why my daughter turned her back on me," she said, her voice trembling perfectly for the camera. "I raised her alone after her father died. I only wanted a family Thanksgiving. She told the restaurant not to serve us." Her hand trembled as she dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. "I'll never understand what I did wrong." The comments scrolled faster than I could read. Unbelievable. She banned her own mother. This generation has no respect. I felt the room tilt. Ben came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Elena, you okay?" I held the phone out wordlessly. His eyes flicked over the screen. "Oh, damn." By noon, the video had been shared nearly 2,000 times. Twitter threads, Reddit posts, local gossip pages. Number Family First was trending in Seattle, and my restaurant was the punchline. I tried to ignore it, focusing on orders, customers, anything that would make the noise stop. But my notifications wouldn't. Every buzz was another stab of humiliation. Then came the review bombs. "Heartless owner refuses to serve her own mother on Thanksgiving. Disgusting behavior. Don't support people with no family values. 1 star. Shameful." All posted within an hour. Ben looked at me from across the counter. "Should I start responding to these?" "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "If we defend ourselves, it'll only make it worse." But it was already worse. My brother Ryan called that evening. His voice came sharp through the phone. "Mom's devastated. Why would you do that to her?" I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "Ryan, she told me not to come. She literally texted, 'Thanksgiving is family only.' I have the message. She said you misunderstood. That you told her you couldn't make it because you were working. That's not true. Maybe you just don't remember correctly," he said, tone softening but still patronizing. "You've been under a lot of stress." I wanted to scream. "I have the text, Ryan. I can show you." He sighed. "I don't want to fight. Just apologize. Okay? She's hurting." Then he hung up. I stared at the phone until my reflection blurred in the screen. Melissa texted minutes later. "You always need to be the victim. Maybe stop making Mom the villain for once." That one hurt the most. That night, Harper's Table was emptier than usual. A few regulars still came in, but the energy felt off. People whispered, looked at me longer than they should have. One woman even leaned to her friend and said loudly, "She's the one from the video." I retreated to my office upstairs, heart hammering, trying not to cry. The cursor blinked on the computer screen, mocking me as I checked the reservation log. 8 cancellations. Ben appeared at the door, his face pale. "Boss, we've got a problem." "What now?" "Another 20 reviews in the last hour. All 1 star. And some of our regulars just called. They're canceling their bookings for next week. They said they don't want drama with dinner." I leaned back in the chair, feeling my throat tighten. "How many cancellations total?" 17. "That's $2,000 in revenue." Ben hesitated. "You should probably see this too." He handed me his phone. On the screen was another post, my mother again, this time holding a bouquet of flowers. The caption read, "Forgiveness is hard when your own child humiliates you, but I'm trying to find peace." Below it, hundreds of comments flooded in. "You're a saint, Diane. She doesn't deserve you. Some mothers are too good for this world." I scrolled until my vision swam. "She's doing it on purpose," I whispered. "She's turning everyone against me." Ben lowered his voice. "Do you want me to call her? Try to mediate?" I shook my head. "No, she'll just twist it. She always does." He hesitated, then left quietly, leaving me alone with the dim hum of the office lights. By the next morning, our phone was ringing off the hook. Not customers, reporters. Local blogs wanted a statement. A gossip podcast wanted an interview. Someone even left a voicemail saying, "How does it feel to ruin Thanksgiving for your own family?" My inbox exploded with hate mail. "You're heartless. I hope your restaurant fails. Your mother raised a monster." I started deleting them one by one until I couldn't see the screen anymore. That afternoon, I got a call from the bank. "Miss Carter, this is Robert Chen with First Northwest," the man said. "We've been notified of recent negative publicity affecting your business. We'll need to review your loan status." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means we'll reassess your risk. Please prepare to bring your financial documents in by Monday." I hung up, trembling. By evening, Harper's table was half empty again. The kitchen felt eerily quiet, the clatter of dishes echoing too loudly. I caught Ben staring at the empty tables and looking away quickly when he saw me notice. "Don't," I said. "We'll recover." He nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe it. After closing, I sat alone at one of the tables, staring at the flickering candlelight. Every muscle in my body screamed to give up, but something in me refused. My phone buzzed. A new voicemail. I hit play. "You don't know me, but you need to hear the truth about your mother." The voice was soft female, a little shaky. "She's not who you think she is. My name's Grace. I worked with her at General West Hospital years ago. And I can tell you, you're not the first person she's tried to destroy." The line went dead. I sat frozen, listening to the echo of her words in the dark. When the phone buzzed again, it was a text from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow morning at the cafe across from the hospital. Don't tell anyone. Grace." I read it 3 times before locking my screen. The restaurant around me felt different now, quieter, heavier, as if the walls themselves knew a secret I didn't. I glanced out the window at the rain streaking down the glass. My reflection stared back at me, tired, hollow, but alive. Maybe Grace was lying. Maybe this was another trick. But what if it wasn't? If my mother had done this to someone else, then this wasn't just family drama. It was a pattern. I looked around at the empty dining room, the flickering candles, the photos on the wall of happy customers. My dream was crumbling because of her lies. And yet, deep down, a new thought began to form, a sharp, dangerous spark I hadn't felt before. If she wanted a war built on lies, I'd fight her with the truth. I blew out the last candle, locked the door behind me, and stepped out into the cold Seattle night, the rain soaking my hair. Tomorrow I would find out who Grace really was, and maybe finally what kind of woman my mother had always been. Monday morning came heavy with rain and silence. The air inside Harper's table felt colder than usual. The hum of the refrigerator, the only sound filling the empty dining room. I stood behind the counter, staring at the reservation list on my phone. 3 cancellations, then 5, Then 10. Ben entered holding a printed sheet. "You might want to sit down," he said softly. I didn't move. How bad he placed the list on the counter. "They said they don't want to be caught in family drama." I exhaled slowly, feeling my chest tighten. The phrase family drama had turned into poison overnight. I looked around the restaurant. The tables were perfectly set, candles, unlit, fresh flowers wilting from the weekend. Only 2 customers had walked in all morning, and both left without ordering. The place that used to buzz with laughter now felt like a church after a funeral. My phone buzzed again, another Google notification. I already knew what it would say, but I opened it anyway. 1 star, the owner bans her own mother from Thanksgiving dinner. Shameful. I set the phone face down. "I built this place with love," I said under my breath. "Now they think I'm a monster." Ben stayed quiet. The look in his eyes, half pity, half fear, was worse than any insult. By noon, the damage was undeniable. 8 more reservations gone, over $2,000 in losses in a single morning. 2 suppliers called asking for immediate payment instead of 30-day terms. I retreated to my office, pacing, trying to calm my breathing. When the phone rang again, I grabbed it before the second ring. "Harper's Table," Elena speaking. A man's voice came through, firm and detached. "Miss Carter, this is Robert Chen from First Northwest Bank." My stomach dropped. "Yes, of course. We've received several complaints about your business in the past 48 hours. In light of the publicity surrounding your family, the bank is required to reassess the risk of your existing loan." I gripped the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. "What does that mean?" "It means we need updated financial records immediately, and depending on performance, we may adjust your interest rate." I swallowed. "Adjusted?" How much? He paused just long enough to make me nervous. "From 4% to 7% effective next cycle." The call ended before I could argue. When I hung up, my hand was shaking. Ben knocked softly at the door. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Sure, just another Monday." He didn't smile back. That night I sat alone in the restaurant long after closing, staring at the empty chairs. The rain tapped against the windows like tiny fingers, steady and relentless. Lucy, one of my servers, walked up hesitantly, holding her jacket. "Elena, can we talk?" I nodded. "I'm so sorry, but I have to quit. My rent's due and I can't risk losing hours if business keeps dropping." I felt something inside me deflate. "I understand," I said quietly. She hesitated, guilt flashing in her eyes. "You're a good boss. I just can't afford loyalty right now." After she left, Ben leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Maybe it's time to talk to her." I knew who he meant. "She's not looking for peace," I said. "She wants me ruined." He looked down, his voice gentle. "Then what are you going to do?" I didn't answer. By midnight, I was still at my desk, staring at the flickering security camera feed. Outside, the streetlights glowed through the mist. I saw my reflection in the window, tired, hollow, almost unrecognizable. The phone rang again. My landlord this time. "Miss Carter, I've received some complaints," he said cautiously. "Other tenants in the building are concerned about the negative publicity. They believe it's affecting their businesses." I pressed my fingers to my temple. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we may need to review your lease terms. If this continues, early termination is possible." My throat went dry. "You can't. I'm giving you 60 days notice," he said. "I'm sorry, Elena. I like your restaurant, but business is business." When the call ended, I stared at the silent phone, the hum of the refrigerator filling the void. 60 days. 2 months to save everything. The tears came before I could stop them. Hot, frustrated, useless tears. I didn't just lose customers. I was losing my dream. When I finally closed my eyes, exhaustion won and I drifted into a restless sleep at my desk. The phone woke me hours later. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in me said answer. "Hello?" A woman's voice, soft, careful. "Elena, it's Grace. We spoke yesterday." I sat up straight. "Grace. Yes, thank you for calling. "I heard what's happening to your restaurant," she said. "It's not right. And I think I can help you understand why she's doing this. Why my mother's doing this, yes." The rain outside grew heavier, pounding against the windows. "Can we meet?" Grace asked. "There's more you need to know, things I couldn't say over the phone." I hesitated, torn between fear and desperation. "When tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, the cafe across from the hospital." "All right," I said. Before I could ask anything else, the line went dead. I set the phone down and stared at it, the glow of the screen reflecting in my eyes. Something about Grace's voice, tired but sure, made me believe her. And yet another part of me was terrified of what she might reveal. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I scrolled through messages from customers canceling reservations, suppliers tightening payment terms, bloggers speculating about the family feud behind Harper's table. Each post chipped away at the edges of my composure. Around 2 a.m., I walked through the empty dining room. The smell of stale wine lingered. A single candle still burned on the corner table, Lucy's last table before she quit. I sat down, resting my head on folded arms. In my mind, I replayed every moment that had led here: the text message, the humiliation, the endless calls. I had tried to protect my dignity, but every attempt to defend myself only seemed to prove her right in the eyes of others. Maybe this was her real talent: control through perception. She didn't need to shout to destroy me. All she had to do was whisper. When I finally lifted my head, dawn was breaking, faint pink light seeping through the rain clouds. I looked around my restaurant, the place that used to feel like home, and felt a spark of something unfamiliar. It wasn't anger this time. It was resolve. I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her turn my dream into ashes, just because she couldn't control me anymore. Grace's call replayed in my mind. "There's more you need to know." I closed the laptop, locked the door, and stepped outside into the morning drizzle. The city smelled of wet asphalt and coffee, heavy with promise and exhaustion. Maybe tomorrow would bring another heartbreak, or maybe it would bring answers. Either way, I wasn't running anymore. I looked back once at the sign glowing faintly through the mist, Harper's table, and whispered, "You're worth fighting for." Then I walked away, the rain washing over my face like a quiet vow. Seattle was gray that morning, the kind of heavy fog that made everything look like it was hiding. I sat in the corner of a cafe across from the hospital, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Every time the door opened, my heart jumped. Then she walked in. Grace was smaller than I'd imagined, in her early 50s, with silver streaks in her brown hair and tired eyes that carried too many stories. She scanned the room, saw me, and gave a small nod. "You must be Elena," she said softly. "Yes." I stood and gestured to the chair across from me. "Thank you for coming." She sat down, clutching her bag like a shield. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she exhaled slowly, like someone who'd been holding her breath for years. "I worked with your mother," she began. "A long time ago. General West Hospital 10 years back." My pulse quickened. "You said she's done this before." "What did you mean?" Grace hesitated, fingers tightening around her cup. "I was a patient, not staff. I went in for gallbladder surgery. Routine, nothing complicated. Your mother was my nurse." She paused, her gaze distant. "She gave me the wrong dosage of medication, 10 times the amount. I went into cardiac arrest. They told me later I was dead for 2 minutes. I felt the air leave my lungs. Oh my God, the doctors saved me," she said quietly. "But my heart's never been the same. I live with damage now. When I woke up and found out what happened, I wanted to report it. But the hospital convinced me not to. They said it would be my word against hers. They offered me $50,000 and made me sign an agreement." She looked down at her trembling hands. "I was young, scared, and stupid. I took the money. I thought they'd handle it internally. But they didn't. They just moved her to another department, covered it up, and pretended it never happened. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I spoke. "You're saying my mother almost killed you, and no one ever found out?" Grace nodded. "She's careful, charming, respected. People believe her. She's one of those women who knows exactly how to play the part of the hero. I felt cold all over. The words sank into me like stones. She's doing the same thing to you now, Grace said, leaning closer. She makes herself the victim. She manipulates people until they don't know what's true anymore. My eyes stung, but I refused to cry. Why are you telling me this? Because I saw the news, Grace said. The video, the comments, everything. It made me sick. I've lived through her lies once, and I can't watch her destroy another person, especially her own daughter. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. You're not the first. There are others. Inside were 3 names written in neat handwriting: Patricia Moore, Nathan Cole, Rachel Finley. Patricia was your mother's supervisor. Nathan, her co-worker. Rachel, her closest friend. All of them crossed her in some way, and all of them paid for it. I looked up. How do you know this? I kept in touch with people at the hospital, Grace said. When your mom's video went viral, I reached out to anyone who might know the truth. Patricia was the first to respond. She said your mother filed a harassment complaint against her after she caught Diane altering a patient's chart. Altering a chart, Grace nodded. To cover up another medication error, Patricia confronted her privately. 2 days later, she was accused of sexual harassment and suspended. She left the hospital soon after. Diane came out spotless. My stomach churned. Nathan Cole tried to report her for giving the wrong medicine to a child, Grace continued. She accused him of stealing painkillers. He was investigated, cleared a year later, but his reputation was ruined. He left the medical field entirely. And Rachel, I whispered. She was your mother's best friend, Grace said softly. 15 years of friendship. Rachel refused to lie for her during a hospital audit. Your mother told everyone Rachel had stolen money from her. Rachel lost half her friends. She moved across the state just to start over. I stared at the folder in silence. My mind raced through years of childhood memories. Mom's warnings, her punishments, the way she'd turn everyone against me whenever I stood up to her. It had always felt like emotional warfare. I just hadn't realized how far it went. Do they have proof? I asked, my voice barely audible. Some, Grace said. Emails. Old reports. Text messages. Patricia still has the HR documents. Nathan has his investigation file. Rachel has a recording your mother's voice admitting she lied about the theft. I covered my mouth, heart pounding. You've spoken to them, yes. They all want to talk to you. But Elena, be careful. She'll find out you're digging. She always does. The warning lingered in the air between us. After Grace left, I sat there for a long time staring out at the drizzle streaking down the window. The hospital across the street loomed gray and silent. It looked like a place that could swallow people whole, and maybe it already had. When I finally stood, I felt a strange calm under the fear. Maybe for the first time I wasn't crazy. Maybe the monster I'd been fighting wasn't invisible after all. That night I walked along the pier, letting the salt air sting my skin. The city lights shimmered on the water, blurred and trembling. I thought of every time my mother had told me I was overreacting, dramatic, ungrateful. Every time she'd made me doubt what I knew was true. I remembered my father's voice in the back of my mind. Truth doesn't need defending, Elena. It only needs courage. I went home and spread Grace's papers on my kitchen table. I read every line until the words blurred. When I finished, I turned on my laptop and started typing the names: Patricia Moore, Nathan Cole, Rachel Finley. Within minutes, I found them, each one living a different life far away from Seattle. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed 3 emails. My name is Elena Carter. You don't know me, but you knew my mother. I need to understand what happened. Before I could change my mind, I hit send. It was past midnight when I finally stood, exhausted but clear-headed. On my way to the door, I noticed a small envelope slipped under it. No return address. I bent down and picked it up, my pulse quickening. Inside was a single printed photo, grainy, taken through a cafe window. It showed me sitting across from Grace that morning. Scrawled across the bottom in red ink, "Stop digging, Elena. You don't know what you're dealing with." My hands shook as I looked around the apartment, half expecting someone to be there. The walls felt closer, the shadows darker. She knew. Somehow, she already knew. I grabbed the photo, tore it in half, and threw it into the trash. My breathing was shallow, uneven, but under the fear was something else, something sharp and steady. If she thought threats would make me stop, she didn't know me at all. I sat back down at my desk and opened a new folder on my computer. I named it The Truth. One by one, I uploaded every document Grace had given me. The bar crept forward slowly, almost painfully, until it stopped at 99%. Then the screen blinked. Upload failed, unauthorized access detected. My cursor froze. A new message appeared on the screen. You should have listened. The blood drained from my face. I shut the laptop, heart pounding. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled over the city. I stood at the window, watching the rain hit the glass. If she wanted to scare me, it worked. But fear wasn't going to stop me now. I pressed my palm against the window, staring at my own reflection, the daughter she thought she could silence. Not this time, I whispered. Behind me, the city glowed faintly through the storm. Tomorrow, I would find Patricia. And when I did, I'd start tearing down the empire of lies my mother had spent her life building. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo, me and Grace at the cafe, the red scrawl, "Stop digging." I could almost feel someone's eyes on me, hidden somewhere in the dark. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. If my mother wanted to scare me, it only meant I was getting close to the truth. The city was still waking when I pulled my coat tight and headed toward Fremont. Patricia Moore had agreed to meet me at a small coffee shop overlooking the canal. She was already there when I arrived. Mid-50s, sharp features, softened by exhaustion, a woman who'd learned to live with quiet anger. "Thank you for coming," I said. Patricia studied me for a moment. "You look like her," she said finally. Same eyes, same determination. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment. "Grace told me what happened at the hospital. She said you used to supervise my mother." Patricia nodded, stirring her tea. 3 years, the best and worst of my career. "What happened?" she sighed. "Your mother was talented, efficient, charming, never made mistakes when people were watching. But behind the curtain, she cut corners. Small things at first, dosing logs, chart corrections. I caught her changing a patient's medication record one night. Not maliciously maybe, but it was still serious. I confronted her privately, told her to fix it before I reported it." Patricia's voice cracked slightly. 2 days later, I got an email from HR. A complaint had been filed against me. Sexual harassment. "From your mother." My throat tightened. "That's impossible." "Oh, she made it convincing," Patricia said bitterly. "She cried in meetings, said I'd made comments, touched her shoulder inappropriately. She had witnesses, people who owed her favors. I was suspended for 6 months. Even after the investigation cleared me, no one looked at me the same. I resigned. I swallowed hard." "Do you still have the records?" Patricia reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "Emails, HR letters, my resignation papers. I kept everything. Maybe I knew someday someone would need them." I took the envelope with trembling hands. "Thank you." Patricia smiled faintly. "You're braver than I was, but be careful. She fights dirty." When I left the cafe, the air felt colder. My phone buzzed, a new message from an unfamiliar number. "Be home by 6. No name, no context. I deleted it without replying. The next meeting was in Volunteer Park. Nathan Cole had agreed to see me for 15 minutes only. I found him sitting on a bench under a sycamore tree, wearing a worn denim jacket and holding a cup of black coffee. "You're Diane's daughter," he said before I could speak. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I need to know what she did." He gave a dry laugh. "What she didn't do would be easier to list." He looked out over the empty park. "I used to work nights with your mother. She was brilliant, I'll give her that. But she couldn't stand being questioned. When I reported that she'd given the wrong dosage to a child, she filed a complaint saying I was stealing painkillers. They found nothing, but the damage was done. My license renewal got delayed, patients started avoiding me. Eventually I quit. She kept her job. I lost my career. I tried to imagine the weight of that. Why didn't you expose her? Because people like her don't fall, he said simply. They land on their feet. Always. Nathan handed me a folded paper, a copy of his exoneration letter from the state board. That's proof, she lied. But I'm warning you, truth won't protect you. I tried to fight her with facts. She fought me with reputation, and reputation wins every time. I tucked the paper into my bag. Not this time, I said. His eyes softened. Then I hope you're stronger than the rest of us. By late afternoon, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. I walked to a quiet diner in Capitol Hill to meet the last person on Grace's list, Rachel Finley. Rachel was already seated, her posture tense, a faded photo peeking out from under her wallet, two young nurses smiling, arms around each other. My mother's face looked younger, almost innocent. I haven't seen that photo in years, Rachel said when she noticed me looking. It's the day before everything fell apart. What happened between you two? Rachel exhaled, eyes glassy. I thought she was my friend. When the hospital started investigating her over a missing medication log, she asked me to lie for her. I refused. I told the auditors the truth. A week later, she told everyone I'd stolen money from her. My friends stopped calling. Even my husband started to wonder. She broke my life with one rumor. Her voice shook. I moved to Spokane just to escape her shadow. I felt a lump rise in my throat. Do you have proof? Rachel nodded and slid her phone across the table. A recording. I was desperate for closure. I called her 2 years after everything happened and recorded the conversation. You'll want to hear this. She hit play. The sound of my mother's voice filled the air, steady, cold, unapologetic. You can't undo what's done, Rachel. People believe what they want to believe. I just gave them a little push. Then laughter. Light, casual, terrifying. I froze. Rachel stopped the recording. I kept it because I thought maybe one day someone would believe me. Looks like that someone's you. I stared at the table. She's ruined so many lives. Rachel placed her hand over mine, and she'll keep doing it until someone stops her. When I left the diner, the sky had turned to ash. I walked home through puddles reflecting the orange city lights, feeling like the world was tilting around me. Back at Harper's table, the restaurant was empty, closed for the night. I spread the papers across the bar, Patricia's HR letters, Nathan's report, Rachel's recording, Grace's folder. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You should stop this. She knows. I glanced at the front window. A car was parked across the street, headlights dim, engine idling. A silhouette sat inside, unmoving. I turned off the lights and locked the door. My heart thudded so hard I could feel it in my throat. When the phone rang again, I answered before thinking. Who is this? A pause. Then a voice I knew too well. Stop meeting people, my mother said calmly. You don't want to make this worse. I went cold. How did you? I know everything that happens in your life. Always have. You're spying on me now. I'm protecting you, she said, her voice sharp. You're too naive to see how dangerous this is. No, Mom, I said, shaking. You're the danger. She didn't reply. Just a long exhale, then the line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, breathing hard. When I finally turned around, my reflection stared back at me from the dark window, pale, determined, no longer afraid. If she wanted control, she'd have to fight for it. I walked to my office, opened my laptop, and created a folder named Mother, divided by evidence. I uploaded everything, the emails, the photos, the recording, the letters. Then, I set it to back up to a cloud drive and encrypted it with a password only I knew. Halfway through, the screen flickered again. For a moment, I thought it was another hack. But the upload finished this time 100%. I exhaled slowly, my body trembling with adrenaline. Outside, the car was gone. The street was empty except for the rain. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt a sliver of power return to me. I wasn't the helpless daughter anymore. I was the woman who knew the truth. I turned off the lights and stood in the doorway of Harper's table. The rain shimmered under the street lamps, washing the city clean. She wanted control. I wanted justice. And justice, I realized, was already on its way. The police came just after dawn. Ben opened the restaurant for the breakfast prep and found 2 uniformed officers waiting at the door. By the time I arrived, they were already sitting in my office, their notebooks open, their expressions unreadable. Miss Carter, one of them, said, "We're following up on a complaint. It alleges fraudulent business practices and harassment toward a former employee." "Do you have a moment?" I blinked, gripping the back of the chair to steady myself. "A complaint from who?" The officer flipped a page. "A Miss Diane Carter." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "My mother." "She also mentioned financial misconduct," he added gently. "We're required to verify." I felt Ben's eyes on me from the doorway. My hands trembled as I forced a smile. "You're welcome to inspect anything you like. My books are open." They did. For 2 hours, they combed through ledgers, payroll receipts. Every document was pristine, every number matched. When they left, one of the officers paused at the door. "You'd be surprised," he said softly. "Family disputes can turn uglier than anything else." When the door shut, I sank into my chair. Ben set a cup of coffee in front of me, but I didn't touch it. "She's escalating," I whispered. "Then maybe it's time to escalate back," he said. He was right. I opened my laptop and started a video call with Grace, Patricia, Nathan, and Rachel. 4 tired faces appeared on the screen, framed by living rooms and kitchen walls, each one of them carrying the same weary determination. "We're all here," Grace said. "What's happening now?" "She filed a police complaint," I said. "False claims. It's only a matter of time before she twists this in the media again." Patricia frowned. "You have to get ahead of it." "How?" "By making her lies impossible to sustain," Nathan said. "Combine what we have, the emails, the recordings, everything. Build one clear narrative she can't deny." I leaned back, rubbing my temples. "You mean expose her?" Grace's voice came steady. "You call it exposure. I call it survival." Rachel looked directly into the camera. "If we stay quiet, she wins again. You've seen what she does to people who stay quiet." Silence filled the screen. Then I nodded. "All right, we build the file." That night, the restaurant turned into a war room. Ben helped me scan and organize documents. We pieced together every thread: Patricia's emails, Nathan's investigation files, Rachel's recording, Grace's settlement papers. When it was done, the evidence folder was nearly 100 pages long. I titled it, "The Truth About Diane Carter." But even before we finished, the counterattack came. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. Diane had posted a new video. She sat in her living room, face pale but composed, voice trembling in just the right places. "I've tried to love my daughter," she said, "but she's unstable. She's been contacting people from my past, spreading lies to ruin me. I only hope she gets the help she needs." Her tears fell perfectly on cue. By midnight, the video had over 12,000 views and a sea of sympathetic comments. "She's such a strong woman. Some children are just born heartless. Prayers for you, Diane." I slammed the laptop shut. My phone was already buzzing with texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some offered pity, most offered judgment. A few hours later, my story hit the local news. Nurse of 30 years targeted by bitter daughter. The accompanying photo was me, taken from my restaurant's website, cropped to look smug. I felt my stomach twist. The truth was drowning in her performance. Ryan called that night. His voice was tense. "Elena, what the hell is going on?" Mom's crying nonstop. "You're calling her a criminal now. She is Ryan. She's been doing this for years. To other people. I have proof." "Proof?" he scoffed. "I've seen your so-called evidence." She said, "Those are all doctored. You've lost it. Ryan, please, I can't do this." He cut me off. "You need help." The call ended with the click of finality. For a long moment, I stood in the middle of the dark restaurant staring at the phone like it was a weapon aimed at me. By morning, the hate mail had doubled. Someone vandalized. The front window, scrawled in black paint, were the words, "Ungrateful daughter." I called the police, filed a report, cleaned it off myself. That evening, I was reviewing security footage when I noticed something strange. A woman outside the restaurant late at night, her face hidden by a hood, talking to a man near a silver sedan. I zoomed in, my heart freezing when I recognized the man's face. David Lang. I'd seen his name in the file from Grace's documents, developer, donor, silent investor. I played the footage again, frame by frame. The woman handed him an envelope. He nodded, then got into the car and drove away. My mother wasn't just destroying my reputation. She was planning something. I wrote the name David Lang in my notebook and circled it twice. The next day, Ben helped me look him up. He was a real estate developer, mid-40s, owner of a firm that specialized in buying failing small businesses. And he'd recently filed for a zoning permit to remodel the exact building Harper's Table occupied. It hit me like ice water. She wasn't just punishing me, she was trying to take my restaurant. I printed everything: his business filings, the permit request, even the time-stamped footage. My hands shook as I stacked the pages. That night, I called Ryan again. He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. "I know what she's doing, Ryan. She's selling the building to Lang. I have the proof. Check her office. Please, for once, look for yourself." When I hung up, I felt drained. I'd done everything I could. The next move was his. The following morning, Ryan called. His voice was barely above a whisper. I found it. My heart skipped. What? In her desk drawer. A notebook. The whole plan: Thanksgiving, the video, Lang. Everything. She wrote it out like a business proposal. I sat down, gripping the phone. "Oh my God." She said, "If I take your side, I'll be cut off," he continued, his tone breaking. "She told me I was betraying the family." I closed my eyes. "There is no family left to betray." "Maybe there still is," he said, "if we do the right thing." He sent me photos of the pages. The words stared back like a confession written in ink. Phase 1, public humiliation. Phase 2, financial pressure. Phase 3, legal action. Phase 4, property acquisition. Final goal: sell to Lang, profit $400, 0000. Tears blurred my vision. For once, the evidence wasn't just from strangers. It came from her own hand. When Ryan arrived at the restaurant that evening, he looked exhausted. We sat together at a corner table, the same one where I'd cried weeks earlier. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "If we go public, we destroy her. If we stay quiet, she destroys me." He leaned forward. "Maybe it's time she faces what she's done." I looked at him, my brother, the one who doubted me the longest, and saw something different now. Guilt, yes, but also loyalty. "She won't stop," he said. "But we can." A notification lit up my phone. A message from her. "You think you've won. Family doesn't betray family, Elena. But you already did." I turned the phone over, letting it buzz unanswered. "She's scared," Ryan said. "For once, she's scared of you." "Good," I whispered. "She should be." That night after he left, I sat in the dark restaurant, the rain drumming softly against the windows. The laptop hummed beside me, the folder, The Truth About Diane Carter, glowing on the screen. I opened it, added the scanned pages of her handwritten plan, and backed it up to a new drive labeled simply Justice. Outside, thunder rolled across the bay. My reflection stared back at me in the window, pale, sleepless, determined. She had built her power on lies. I was about to tear it down with truth. Ryan hadn't slept either. His eyes were bloodshot when he showed up at my apartment the next morning, clutching a folder to his chest, like it was radioactive. "She's gone out," he said quietly. I waited until she left for her shift at the clinic. I locked the door behind him. "You found more?" He nodded and opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, handwritten notes, and a thick envelope labeled Project Harper in my mother's looping handwriting. It was all in her desk, Ryan said, hidden under the tax files. She's been planning this for months. He spread the papers out across the kitchen table. Her handwriting filled every inch of the page, organized into numbered phases like a corporate strategy. Phase 1, public humiliation. Stage a family incident to make Elena appear unstable. Gather witnesses from family. Amplify through social media. Phase 2, financial pressure. Contact bank anonymously with concerns. Push suppliers to demand early payments. Phase 3, legal destruction. File defamation suit once her reputation collapse. Phase 4, acquisition. Purchase property through intermediary David Lang. Final goal, acquire Harper's table property and resell for $400, 000 profit. Ryan's voice broke. She wrote it like a business plan, every step. I stared at the neat rows of her handwriting, so methodical, so confident. My throat tightened. She wasn't trying to teach me a lesson, she was trying to erase me. Ryan's eyes were red when he looked at me. I confronted her. She didn't deny it. My breath caught. What did she say? She said she had no choice. That you forced her hand by leaving the family. That she needed to protect what was hers. I felt my hands shaking. Protect what was hers. Harper's table was named after Dad. He helped me dream it up before he died. She doesn't see it that way, Ryan said. She said if I sided with you, I'd be cut out completely. I laughed bitterly. Cut out of what? Her debt, he frowned. What debt? I hesitated. Grace told me she owes the hospital over $300,000 from a malpractice case they buried years ago. They're still taking money out of her checks. That's why she's desperate. Ryan's face drained of color. So she's doing all of this to cover up her own mistakes. Yes, and she's using me to pay for it. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. I can't believe this. All these years she made me feel guilty for not doing enough, for not being loyal enough. I thought she was just strict. She's not strict, I said quietly. She's strategic. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. Then Ryan took a deep breath. What do we do now? I looked at the folder on the table, the blueprint of my mother's destruction. We expose her, I said, but not out of revenge, out of truth. That afternoon, I scanned every page, every note, every email, and uploaded them to the folder labeled Justice. I printed copies and sealed them in an envelope. If she wanted a war, she was going to face facts, not emotions. When I finished, I sat on the couch exhausted. Ryan stood by the window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. I keep thinking about Dad, he said softly. How he used to tell us that doing the right thing doesn't always mean winning. I nodded. He also said that sometimes peace costs more than pride. Ryan smiled faintly. You remember that? I remember everything he said that made her angry. He laughed quietly, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in weeks. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's her. I felt my stomach drop. Don't answer. He stared at the phone, torn. If I ignore her, she'll know something's wrong. She already knows something's wrong, I said. She just doesn't know how wrong it's about to get. He let the call ring out. A few minutes later, my phone lit up instead. Unknown number. I picked it up without thinking. Elena, my mother's voice said smoothly, we need to talk. My pulse quickened. About what? The notebook, a sharp intake of breath. So you've seen it. Ryan showed me everything, I said, my voice trembling but steady. The plan, the deal with Lang, all of it. Silence. Then she said quietly, you don't understand. This was never about you. I laughed bitterly. You destroyed my business, my name, and half my life, but sure, it wasn't about me. Her tone hardened. You think you're righteous, but you have no idea what it's like to build something from nothing and watch it slip away. I've worked for 30 years, Elena. 30 years of saving lives, holding families together, only to lose everything because of one mistake. You mean because you can't admit one, I snapped. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Don't push me, Elena. You won't like what happens next. Then the line went dead. Ryan turned to me. What did she say? That she's out of excuses. The next day, we decided to confront her face to face. Ryan called and said we wanted to talk privately, no lawyers, no shouting. Just a conversation. She agreed, probably thinking she could manipulate her way out again. She arrived at Harper's table in the afternoon, wearing a crisp, white coat like armor. Her hair was perfect, her smile faint. You wanted to talk. Ryan was waiting near the counter, hands in his pockets. I stood by the table where she'd humiliated me months ago, the weight of every betrayal pressing against my chest. Sit, I said. She hesitated but obeyed. What's this about? I placed the folder in front of her. Your plan. Her fingers twitched. I don't know what that is. Stop pretending, Ryan said. I found it. In your desk. In your handwriting. Her face went pale, but her voice stayed smooth. Ryan, you're confused. I was drafting ideas for investment protection, not public humiliation, financial pressure, legal destruction. I read from the page. Final goal: acquire property. That doesn't sound like protection. She exhaled sharply, her mask cracking. You weren't supposed to find that. So it's true, I said. She glared at me, fury flashing through her composure. You made me do this. You walked away, left me drowning in debt and gossip. You had no idea what that felt like. I took a step closer. You're right. I don't know what it's like to drown in debt, but I know what it's like to drown in shame. Yours. She froze, her lip trembling. You ruined good people, I said. Patricia, Nathan, Rachel, Grace. You lied to everyone who trusted you, and you still act like you're the victim. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't believe them anymore. I was trying to survive, she whispered. No, Mom. You were trying to control. There's a difference. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she looked at Ryan, her voice breaking. You too, he nodded slowly. You taught me loyalty, Mom. But you forgot to teach me truth. The silence that followed was unbearable. She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders sinking under the weight of her own lies. Finally, I pushed the folder toward her. You have two choices. End this now, drop the lawsuit. Stop the videos, fix what you broke. Or I take this to the press, the hospital, and the police. Her eyes widened. You'd destroy your own mother, I met her gaze. You already destroyed yourself. She sat there for a long time, the ticking of the wall clock filling the space between us. Then she whispered, What do you want from me? An apology, I said softly. And peace. She closed her eyes. I don't deserve peace. Maybe not, I said, but I do. When she left, the air felt lighter, though the ache in my chest didn't fade. Ryan placed a hand on my shoulder. She'll sign, he said. She doesn't have a choice anymore. I nodded, staring at the empty table. For the first time, I believed him. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds were parting just enough to let a sliver of sunlight cut through, glinting against the glass windows of Harper's table. It wasn't over, not yet, but the end was finally in sight. The text came at midnight. I need to talk. Don't tell Mom. M. For a few seconds, I just stared at it, my heart hammering. Melissa hadn't spoken to me in months. The last time she did, it was to call me selfish and ungrateful. Now suddenly she wanted to talk. I typed back when and where. Her reply came almost instantly. Tomorrow morning. Riverside Cafe. Please, Elena. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the city still wore that gray, damp stillness that followed a storm. I got there early, choosing a table near the back. I half expected her not to show up. Then I saw her. Melissa pushed through the door in a hoodie and jeans, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked smaller than I remembered, the bravado gone. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. You came, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You asked me to, I said carefully. For a long moment she just stared at her coffee, her hands trembling. I was wrong, Elena. Those were the last words I ever expected to hear from her. She swallowed hard. Mom's lying. About everything. I found something last night. I leaned forward, every muscle in my body tense. What did you find? She's selling it. The restaurant. The entire building. My pulse thudded in my ears. What? She's been meeting with that developer David Lang. I saw the emails. She promised him the property once your lease is terminated. The sale contract's already drafted. I froze. You're serious? Melissa pulled a flash drive from her pocket and set it on the table. Every email, every message. She even recorded calls with him in case she needed leverage later. I could barely breathe. How did you get this? I used her laptop. She left it open when she went to bed. The cafe seemed to shrink around us. The clatter of dishes and soft hum of conversation faded into a dull roar in my ears. She's planning to sell Harper's table for $400,000, Melissa whispered. To cover her hospital debt. I stared at her, disbelief giving way to something sharper. She was never trying to teach me a lesson. She was trying to cash me out. Melissa nodded, tears glistening. I didn't believe you at first. I thought she was just hurt. But she's been lying to all of us. I sat back, closing my eyes for a second. Does Ryan know I called him this morning? He's furious. He said he's coming here after work. We sat in silence. For the first time in years, I saw my sister not as an extension of our mother, but as another victim. I can't lie for her anymore, Melissa said. She told me last night that if I didn't take her side, she'd cut me off. No tuition, no insurance, nothing. But I can't keep living like that. I reached across the table and took her hand. You did the right thing. I don't know about that, she whispered. I've been her puppet for so long, I don't even know who I am without her voice in my head. I squeezed her hand gently. You'll figure it out. We all are. When we left the cafe, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. That night, Melissa came to Harper's table with Ryan. We gathered in the dining room, after closing, the three of us sitting around the same table where this whole nightmare began. Ryan laid out Mom's handwritten plan, Melissa plugged in the flash drive, and I spread out the documents from Patricia, Nathan, and Rachel. For a moment, none of us spoke. This is everything, I said quietly. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every person she's hurt. Ryan rubbed his eyes. What's the plan? I want her to face it, I said. All of it. Not in court, not online, in person, here, tomorrow. Melissa looked up alarmed. You're going to confront her, I nodded. With all of us there, with witnesses if needed. She won't be able to twist it this time. Ryan hesitated. She's not going to go quietly. She doesn't have to, I said. She just has to see that she can't win anymore. We spent hours going through the evidence, organizing it chronologically. Every message, every signature, every transaction documented. By the time we finished, it was nearly 2 a.m. Melissa leaned back in her chair, exhaustion etched across her face. Do you think she'll even come? Oh, she'll come, I said. She never turns down a chance to control the narrative. Ryan gave a grim smile. Then tomorrow, we give her a new story to tell. The next morning, I barely ate. I arranged the documents neatly on the long table at Harper's table, the same table where she'd once sat pretending to care about my success. This time it would be the table of truth. The door opened around noon. Diane Carter walked in, immaculate, as ever, a white coat draped over her shoulders, pearls at her neck. She scanned the room, eyes landing on us, her 3 children waiting for her. What is this? She asked, voice cold. Family meeting, Ryan said. Sit down. She frowned, but sat anyway, crossing her legs. I don't appreciate being ambushed. I slid a folder across the table. You'll appreciate this even less. Her eyes narrowed as she flipped it open. I watched the color drain from her face as she saw her own signature, her own emails, her own voice recorded on file. Melissa spoke quietly. You lied to us. You said you were trying to protect the family, but you were trying to sell it. Diane's gaze flicked toward her youngest child. Melissa, don't be dramatic. You don't understand the business side of things. Ryan's voice was steel. No, Mom, we understand perfectly. You set us all up to fail. She slammed the folder shut. I did what I had to do after everything I've sacrificed, after everything I've given. This is how you repay me. You didn't sacrifice for us, I said. You sacrificed us. She glared at me, her composure cracking. You ungrateful girl. Everything I did was to save this family. Save it, I laughed bitterly. You destroyed it. Melissa's voice trembled. You used us like chess pieces, Mom. You made us hate each other. For a second, Diane looked genuinely wounded. Then her expression hardened again. You're all weak. That's the problem. None of you could survive what I've been through. Ryan stood his chair, scraping loudly. No, Mom. We just decided to stop surviving your way. She looked between us, eyes wild, searching for the control she no longer had. So what now? She asked. You think you can threaten me? No, I said. We're not threatening you. We're giving you a choice. End this. Drop the lawsuit. Apologize publicly. Or we release everything, your notes, your emails, your recordings to the world. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The woman who'd always had the last word was suddenly speechless. I'm not doing this to destroy you, I continued. I'm doing this to stop you. You've hurt too many people, and it ends now. She stared at me for a long moment, then at Ryan and Melissa. For the first time in my life, I saw something in her eyes that looked like fear. Finally, she whispered, You'd really do that? Ryan folded his arms. Try us. The silence stretched heavy and electric. Then Diane stood smoothing her coat. Fine, she said quietly. You'll get your apology. But don't think for a second this makes you better than me. I didn't flinch. I don't want to be better than you, Mom. I just want to be free. When she walked out of the restaurant, the door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of a war. Melissa let out a shaky breath. Do you think she'll actually do it? Ryan shrugged. For once, I think she has no choice. I sank into a chair, staring at the empty doorway. She'll do it, I said. Because for the first time, she's outnumbered. We sat in silence, the three of us, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd tried to bury. Outside, the rain started again, but it sounded softer this time, cleansing instead of cruel. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. Not victory, not revenge, just peace. The air inside Harper's table was still thick with anticipation. Noon sunlight streamed through the tall windows, reflecting off the polished tables. Every sound, footsteps, a chair creaking, the faint hum of the fridge felt amplified. Ryan stood near the counter, Melissa beside me, her arms folded tight against her chest. When the door finally opened, the quiet broke. My mother walked in, her heels sharp against the floor. She looked smaller somehow, her face pale, but her eyes still held that familiar chill. I'm here, she said flatly. Let's get this over with. I gestured toward the long table at the center of the room. Sit. She hesitated, her gaze flicking between the three of us before she slowly sat down. You didn't have to make this a performance, she said, her tone dry. Family shouldn't air its grievances in public. Ryan pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the table. You made it public, Mom. Her lips tightened. I defended myself. Melissa leaned forward. You lied. About everything. Diane's eyes shifted toward her youngest. You're too young to understand how the world works. Melissa's voice cracked. No, Mom. I understand exactly how you work. The silence that followed was sharp. Then I reached across the table and opened the folder. This is what you did, I said, sliding one document after another toward her. Emails, contracts, messages with Lang, and your handwritten notes. Your entire plan, step by step. She looked down at the pages, her expression unreadable. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Ryan said. They're yours. Her voice wavered slightly. I was under stress. I made mistakes, but you don't know what it's like to lose everything. Stop, I said softly. Stop pretending this was survival. You humiliated me. You manipulated everyone around you, and for what money? Tears filled her eyes, but her face remained composed. You think this was about money. You've never understood what it takes to keep a family together. I carried this family after your father died. I worked double shifts, I paid every bill while you all lived in your own little worlds. Ryan stepped forward, his voice low but steady. You carried the family, Mom, but you crushed it too. You wanted control, not love. Her breath hitched, but she didn't respond. I took a deep breath. Do you remember Thanksgiving? The text you sent me? Family only. Find somewhere else to eat. You said that because I was finally living without you. You couldn't stand that I didn't need your approval. Her fingers trembled slightly on the table. I just wanted you home. No, I said. You wanted me obedient. She looked away, blinking hard, her mask beginning to crack. You all turned on me, she whispered. You don't know what that feels like. Ryan's voice softened. We didn't turn on you, Mom. We finally stopped letting you turn us against each other. She closed her eyes, the weight of his words pressing down like gravity. For a long time, no one moved. Then Melissa stood and walked toward her. I went through your laptop, she said quietly. I saw everything, the messages with Lang, the contract to sell Harper's Table. You were going to trade Elena's dream for a check. Diane looked up sharply. You invaded my privacy, Melissa's eyes glistened. You invaded all of ours for years. The words landed like a blow. My mother's shoulders sagged. For the first time she looked fragile, not defeated yet, but close. I reached for the final document, a prepared statement from my lawyer, and set it before her. You have a choice. You can keep fighting and lose everything, or you can end this now. Drop the lawsuit. Admit the truth publicly. Restore what you destroyed. She stared at the papers. You'd really expose me, I nodded. If I have to. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. She picked up the pen with shaking fingers. Do you hate me that much? No, I said softly. I'm just done letting you break me. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes, once sharp and commanding, seemed tired now, like she'd finally seen the damage she'd caused. Then, without another word, she signed her name at the bottom of the page. Ryan exhaled audibly, the tension in the room loosening just a little. Melissa pressed her palms together, tears slipping down her cheeks. When it was done, Diane pushed the papers away and slumped in the chair. What now? I said you do what you should have done months ago. You apologize. Publicly. You tell the truth. She let out a shaky breath. You want a performance? Fine. I'll give you one. I shook my head. No, I want honesty. For once. Her gaze lifted to mine, and for the first time I saw something real: guilt, maybe even shame. I thought I was helping, she whispered. I thought if I pushed hard enough you'd come home. I blinked back, tears. You didn't push me home, Mom. You pushed me away. Her voice broke. Your father would be ashamed of me. Yeah, Ryan said quietly. He would. The words hit her like a slap. She stood abruptly, wiping her eyes. I'll post the apology tonight, she said hoarsely. And I'll make the calls to withdraw the suit. I nodded. Thank you. At the door she paused. For a moment I thought she'd turn back into the woman who always had the last word. But her shoulders dropped. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said. No, I said, but I'm giving it anyway. She nodded slowly, then left. The door closed behind her with a soft thud. For a few seconds, the three of us just stood there listening to the quiet. Then Melissa began to sob. Ryan put an arm around her, and for the first time in years, we felt like siblings again, instead of survivors of the same war. Ben appeared from the kitchen, hesitant. Is it over? I smiled faintly. I think so. He looked at the signed document on the table, then at me. You didn't destroy her, he said softly. You could have. I stared at the doorway where she'd stood moments before. That's not how I win. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The restaurant stayed closed, but I stayed inside, cleaning, organizing, trying to quiet my mind. Each movement felt like a small act of healing. As evening fell, Ryan returned with takeout boxes. Melissa came too, her eyes still swollen but her shoulders lighter. We ate together at the same table where the confrontation had taken place. When Ryan raised his glass, his voice trembled. To starting over, I clinked mine against his. To truth, I said. And to peace. Melissa smiled faintly. And maybe to forgiveness. I looked out the window. The rain had stopped again, replaced by soft golden light. The city felt new, somehow washed clean. Later that night I checked my phone. A new post appeared on my mother's page. To my daughter Elena and to everyone who has followed this painful story, I owe an apology. I let my pride and fear cloud my judgment. I created a lie that hurt the person I love most. Elena never excluded me from her restaurant. I excluded her from my heart. She showed me mercy when I didn't deserve it. Please remove any comments or reviews you made against Harper's Table. My daughter deserves peace and forgiveness. I stared at the words, tears filling my eyes. For once, she sounded human. Ben texted a few minutes later. It's working. The bad reviews are disappearing. I smiled through my tears. It's really over, I whispered. When I turned off the lights that night, Harper's Table glowed softly under the street lamps. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel haunted by anger or loss. It felt like home again. I stood at the door, whispering to the empty room. We did it, Dad. Then I walked out into the night, ready for whatever came next. By morning, the apology had gone viral. When I walked into Harper's Table, Ben was already at the counter with his phone in hand, grinning wider than I'd seen in months. You're trending for the right reason this time, he said. When I blinked, he handed me the phone. On the screen was my mother's public post, the one she'd promised to write, and underneath it were thousands of comments. It takes real strength to admit when you're wrong. Proud of both of them for choosing forgiveness over revenge. Just made a reservation at Harper's Table to support this amazing woman. My throat tightened as I scrolled. The tide had turned overnight. Where there had once been hate, there was now empathy. Customers were posting photos of their meals from before the scandal, writing things like, "This restaurant deserves another chance." Ben laughed. We're fully booked for the next 3 weekends. The wait list is already 50 people long. I covered my mouth, tears threatening to spill. You're kidding. Not even close. He paused. Also, the landlord called. They're dropping the eviction notice, said the other tenants withdrew their complaints. I sank into a chair, the relief washing over me so hard it almost hurt. It's really over, Ben said, smiling. And better. By noon, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted statements. Former customers wanted to apologize. Even one of the bank officers who'd raised my interest rate called to reassess the terms. Imagine that, Ben said dryly. People realizing you were right all along, I laughed softly. No, not right. Just still standing. The day passed in a blur of noise and gratitude. I spent the afternoon answering messages from strangers who said the story had given them hope, people who'd been through family betrayals, toxic relationships, broken ties. One message stopped me cold. Dear Elena, I'm Patricia Moore. I saw your mother's apology. I wanted to tell you that I won't be pursuing legal action against her. The way you handled everything with grace instead of vengeance reminded me that maybe healing is more important than punishment. Thank you. I pressed a hand to my heart. Another email followed from Nathan Cole, then Rachel Finley. Each said something similar, that seeing me forgive had helped them let go too. Maybe I thought forgiveness really was contagious. That evening, Ryan and Melissa came by the restaurant. We sat in the quiet dining room after closing the same table where everything had fallen apart weeks before. Ryan poured 3 glasses of wine. So to officially close the chapter. Melissa smiled faintly. And to new ones. We clinked glasses, the sound light and warm in the dim light. How's Mom? I asked. Ryan shrugged. Quiet. She's been keeping to herself. Said she's starting therapy next week. Melissa nodded. She told me she's taking a job at a community clinic part-time, nothing high pressure. I felt something shift inside me. That's good. Ryan gave me a long look. You're not going to see her yet, are you? I shook my head. Not yet. I need time. But maybe someday. Melissa smiled. When you're ready, not when she asks. Exactly, I said. We spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about our father, the quiet strength he'd carried, the way he used to calm our mother with a single look. For the first time, the memories didn't sting. They felt like closure. When they left, I stayed behind, walking slowly through the empty restaurant. The air felt different now, lighter, alive. The kitchen lights glowed softly, and I could almost hear my father's voice again. Even in the darkest night, the moon still shines. I whispered the words back, smiling. The next week passed in a rush of recovery. Harper's table was packed every night. The laughter returned, the clinking of glasses, the hum of conversation that had once made the place feel alive. Customers told me they'd come not just for the food, but for the story, for proof that Grace still existed. One evening, Ben pulled me aside. Channel 7 called. They want to do a feature on you, the restaurant that forgave. I laughed. Catchy. You want to do it? I hesitated, then shook my head. Not yet. I think the story's told itself by now. He nodded, smiling. That's why people like you. You don't chase the spotlight, you just stand in it naturally. By the end of the month, the bank reinstated my original loan rate and even offered a small grant for community resilience. I almost laughed when I read the email. Karma had a strange sense of humor. Then one morning I found an envelope slipped under the door. No name, just my address, written in familiar, careful handwriting. Inside was a letter. Elena, I've started therapy. It's difficult, but I'm realizing how much of my life I spent needing to be right instead of kind. You were right, I wanted control because I was afraid. Afraid of losing you, afraid of being alone. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm learning to forgive myself. Thank you for showing me what strength really looks like. If you ever want to talk, I'll be waiting. I love you, Mom. I sat at the counter, reading it over and over. There was no manipulation this time. No hidden guilt, no excuses, just truth. That night after service, I pulled out my phone and typed a message. Coffee next Tuesday, 10 a.m. at Riverside Cafe. The reply came within seconds. I'll be there. Thank you. I didn't know what the conversation would bring. Maybe another round of tears. Maybe silence. Maybe peace. But I knew one thing, I was finally ready to see her, not as the villain, but as a woman who'd lost her way. When I locked up the restaurant and stepped outside, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement. I breathed in the cool air, my chest lighter than it had been in months. Inside, Ben and the team were still laughing as they cleaned. The smell of roasted garlic and warm bread filled the air. Harper's table was alive again, not just as a restaurant, but as proof that broken things could heal. Before heading home, I placed a small framed photo on the counter, one of me and my father on my college graduation day. He was laughing, arm around me, his eyes proud. Underneath, I'd written in small letters, even in the darkest night the moon still shines. It felt right. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped into the soft drizzle outside. For once, I didn't look back. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air. Warm candlelight flickered against the windows of Harper's table, where every table was dressed in gold and cream for the holiday. Laughter drifted through the restaurant like music. 1 year ago, I'd sat in this same place alone, watching my family celebrate without me through a screen. Today, the tables were full of people who had become my family by choice, not blood. Ryan was the first to arrive, holding a box of his fiancée's famous pecan pie. You didn't think I'd let you handle dessert too, did you? He teased. Melissa followed close behind, balancing a vase of orange lilies. Ryan's already eaten half the pie, she said, setting the flowers on the bar. She looked radiant, older, somehow more grounded. Law school finally over, she added proudly, and I'm officially working with a malpractice reform firm. I smiled. Dad would be proud. She squeezed my hand. He'd be proud of you too. Soon after, familiar faces filled the space: Patricia and her husband Nathan, and Rachel, with her teenage daughter, and Grace, who sat near the window with a gentle smile. The hum of conversation swelled. For the first time since my father's death, the Carter family wasn't defined by secrets or manipulation. As I walked between tables refilling glasses and passing dishes, Grace caught my arm. "You've turned this place into something sacred," she said softly. I laughed. "I just turned pain into recipes." "That's still healing," she replied. Her words stayed with me as I stepped back watching the scene unfold. Patricia was laughing at one of Ryan's bad jokes. Melissa was showing Rachel photos from her graduation. Nathan was talking to Ben about mentorship programs. The door opened then and the room grew still. My mother stood in the doorway. She looked smaller than I, remembered no pearls, no polished uniform, just a simple blue sweater and a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. The room went quiet until I walked toward her. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "Thank you for inviting me. I took the flowers. Your family. Family's always welcome." Her eyes glistened. "I don't deserve this." "Maybe not," I said. "But you're here anyway." I led her to a table near the corner where Grace Saturday. Grace greeted her with a warm smile, and for the first time my mother didn't flinch at someone from her past. She simply nodded and whispered, "Thank you for forgiving me." Dinner began soon after. The clinking of silverware and laughter filled every corner. It felt like breathing for the first time after years underwater. When the plates were cleared, I stood holding my glass. "Can I have everyone's attention?" The chatter quieted. I looked around at the faces that had carried me through the hardest year of my life. "This time last year," I began, "I thought Thanksgiving was about where you sit, about who invites you and who doesn't. But I've learned it's really about who stands beside you when the world turns its back. Every one of you has shown me that love doesn't have to come from perfection. It can come from pain, from truth, and from second chances." Ryan raised his glass. "To second chances," he echoed. Melissa wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. "To Elena, who taught us all that grace is stronger than revenge." I laughed, embarrassed. "You're going to make me cry before dessert." But I did cry. Happy tears this time. After dinner, the lights dimmed and soft jazz played through the speakers. I walked toward the window, watching the rain patter gently against the glass. My reflection looked back at me, not the exhausted, broken woman from a year ago, but someone whole. I thought about my father, his voice, echoing softly in memory. "Even in the darkest night, the moon still shines." I whispered it aloud. "You were right, Dad." Behind me, I heard quiet laughter. My mother was talking to Melissa, showing her old photos from when we were kids. It wasn't perfect, there were still scars, but for the first time it felt real. Ryan joined me by the window, holding 2 mugs of cider. "You think she'll keep coming around? I think she'll try," I said. "And that's enough," he nodded. "It's strange, isn't it, how something that started as revenge ended in peace?" I smiled. Maybe they were the same all along, just different ways of taking back control. He raised his mug. "To peace, then." We clinked glasses. Later that night, as the guests began to leave, my mother approached me again. She looked uncertain, almost shy. "Elena, I wanted to thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me another chance. I'm still in therapy. It's not easy, but I'm learning how to be someone I can live with." I smiled softly. "That's all I ever wanted for you." She touched my hand. "I'll never stop trying to earn your forgiveness." "You already did," I whispered. She left a few minutes later, and I stood alone in the glow of the restaurant lights, letting the peace sink in. Harper's table had survived the storm. So had I. 6 months later, the restaurant was featured in a local magazine under the headline, "The Place That Forgave." Customers came from all over just to eat in the space they'd read about. But what mattered most wasn't the success. It was the laughter, the people, the way the air felt lighter. Sometimes I caught my mother sitting at a corner table, quietly sipping tea, smiling at me from across the room. She never interfered again. She just came to eat, to exist, to rebuild. And every time I let her, now as I lock up the restaurant and step outside into the soft night air, I think about everything that's happened. The betrayals, the losses, the forgiveness that changed it all. The moon hangs low above the city, glowing pale gold against the dark clouds. I smile. Even in the darkest night, I whisper, the moon still shines. I turn to the invisible audience that has followed me through this story, my voice gentle but certain. If you've ever been hurt by someone you love, I say softly, remember this. Your pain doesn't have to define you. You can forgive without forgetting. You can heal without surrendering. You can rebuild without revenge. I pause, breathing in the quiet. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven or walked away? I'd love to hear your story. Leave it in the comments below. I read every single one. I smile, warmth rising in my chest. And if this story reminded you that grace can be stronger than anger, that light can come from the darkest places, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Share it with someone who needs a little reminder tonight that healing is possible. The lights inside Harper's table dim as I take one last look at the sign above the door. Even in the darkest night, I whisper again, the moon still shines, and so can you. I walk away down the quiet street, rain beginning to fall in soft silver, drops the glow from the restaurant spilling behind me like the last warm note of a song that never truly ends.